I had to read this article, so you have to as well. Let's go over on the TVA Sports, everybody's favorite NHL news source. I get it, I'm kind of memeing, but you know what I mean. Let's talk about this article that is mentioned on TVA, and it's written by the entire website over here. There isn't one particular writer that is mentioned. Let's go over Kris Letang. The Penguins suspect an interest from the Montreal Canadiens. I know what you're thinking. I'm kind of feeling it too. This article was initially in French. I translated it to English via the Google machine. The link will be in the description below if you want to go ahead and read this yourself. But the negotiations between Kris Letang and the Pittsburgh Penguins promise to be complicated, and the Montreal Canadiens could benefit from this. Before we go over Kris Letang and the entire situation and how Montreal, of all teams, plays into it, let's go over the situation in Pittsburgh right now. Kris Letang is 34 years old, and even though he is 34 years old, he's a guy that is playing some of the best hockey of his career. He still is doing very good, very Kris Letang-like things, as in 40 games played on the season, he has himself 38 points. My goodness, he's got himself a pace of, let's just round it out to 41 games played, because 40, 41, it's only a difference of really one game. He's got himself a pace that sees him on pace for about 76 points. Okay, no, I can't do math. 38 times 2, what the heck is that? 76, yes, I got it. My gosh, I can't believe I got it. But still, he's on pace for just under 80 points on the year, which is phenomenal. Like, that would be a career high, oddly enough, and Kris Letang has had some pretty good careers. No, that's the wrong way to say it. He's had some pretty good seasons over the past career he has had. Yes, that's the right way to say it, my goodness. But still, the long, tenured career of Kris Letang has been filled with offense, it's been filled with points, it's been filled with goals and assists, but this year, for some reason, is his career high point per game year. And as a result, it's making things very interesting when you consider where Letang is going to go next. He's making $7.25 million this season, and that contract expires at the end of the year. And so, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins and their cap structure, where things are going to go, not just with Letang, but with Evgeny Malkin as well, this is kind of the entire conversation everybody loves to talk about when it comes to the future of the Penguins, and whether or not the big three, Crosby, Letang, and Malkin, are sort of on an expiration date. Now, I get it, Sidney Crosby's probably not going anywhere, even though we've made a whole bunch of videos discussing his future as well, and whether or not that could be spent elsewhere, but Letang and Malkin are in different conversations, and it's kind of why this article on TVA Sports is so interesting to me, because when you go over Kris Letang and his entire situation, yes, he is indeed from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. His agent formerly was indeed Kent Hughes. And so, when you connect the dots and you see how the Montreal Canadiens could benefit from the Letang negotiations and how he doesn't want to take a pay cut because he's knowing of himself and his own value and he knows that he's worth a lot of money, it makes things even more interesting to think about. So let's go back over onto the TVA Sports article. As we said, the negotiations between Letang and the Penguins promise to be complicated and the Canadiens could benefit from it. According to The Athletic, Letang, who can become an unrestricted free agent this summer, does not want a pay cut to stay in Pittsburgh. This article is written by Josh Yohei. It's what Jeff Carter's new contract means for Evgeny Malkin, Kris Letang, and the Penguins, because Carter did indeed sign an extension. This article will also be linked in the description below if you want to go ahead and read it, and you have The Athletic. But back to the TVA Sports piece. At 34 years old, the Montrealer is enjoying one of his best seasons in the NHL, claiming 38 points, including 5 goals in 39 games. My goodness, that mark was at 38 points in 39 games earlier on, too. Letang is aware that several defensemen have signed very expensive contracts in recent months, including Seth Jones, Adam Fox, Darnell Nurse, and Morgan Riley. The appointment of his former agent Kent Hughes as GM of the Canadiens has amplified rumors linking Letang to his boyhood club. Okay, come on. That's what you're going to use? It wouldn't surprise anyone in the Pittsburgh organization if Letang ends up talking to the Canadiens and his former agent makes him a substantial offer, reported the Athletic reporter on Penguins coverage, Josh Yohei. According to the same source, Letang knows full well that he could win an $8 million plus contract per year, yeah, my goodness, I kind of brain farted right there, on the free agent market. The Penguins want to retain his services and would be willing to give him a short-term contract that would constitute a salary increase. He's currently making $7.25 million a season. However, Letang could obtain a 4-year agreement on the market. 4 years, for Kris Letang? He's 34 right now, till he's 38 years old? Oh boy. So far in the NHL, Letang has only worn the uniform of the Penguins, who drafted him in the 3rd round in 2005 while playing for Val-d'Or. He won 2 Stanley Cups with the Pennsylvania team in 902 games on the Bettman circuit. He amassed 620 points, yada yada yada. Okay, so, Letang and the Penguins is kind of an interesting relationship because we know that they have themselves their own issues to deal with. It's why Evgeny Malkin and the entire thing going on with the Florida Panthers and all that was such a big conversation that people were having earlier on in the year. But for Kris Letang and his entire future here, I feel like he's been kind of the odd man out when it comes to these discussions. Sure, we all kind of knew that his contract was also expiring and that he had himself a whole bunch of options as well should he decide to go to the free agency market, but all of a sudden, this stuff is very real when you consider the fact that other defensemen in the NHL, like those Seth Joneses and Adam Foxes and Darnell Nurses and Morgan Rileys, have all gotten extreme pay cuts as well. Some, you could even argue, are not really worth it. And so for Kris Letang, this is a guy that if you pay him a significant amount of money, let's face it, he is probably going to be worth it. Letang has always been one of the top guys when it comes to defensive production and all that. Sure, he has never really been one of the number ones, but he has always been in that conversation for over a decade, pretty much, of being just that good. And so, now you take a look at Kris Letang and you say, darn, this is the best year he has been having in his entire career so far when it comes to points per game, that it's kind of difficult to deny this man his money, even though he's 34 years old, even though he might be looking for a contract that takes him until he's 38 years old. If there's anybody at 35, 6, and 7, and 8 that I could honestly trust to still be capable at the NHL level, it's a guy who is as flashy, who is as mobile, who is as offensively productive as Kris Letang. And what do you get when you have yourselves a player in Letang who is not really interested in taking a pay cut to stay with Pittsburgh, and a Montreal Canadiens team that has a connection to this guy in more ways than one? You get yourselves a conversation like this where Josh Yohei says it wouldn't surprise anyone in the Penguins organization if Letang ends up talking to the Canadiens, and if the Canadiens make him a substantial offer, if his former agent makes him a substantial offer. This is so similar to the Vancouver Canucks and the Alexis Lafreniere stuff because, Lafreniere's former agent, Emily Castonguay, is now the assistant GM of Vancouver, which means it would not be surprising if Vancouver goes out there and asks about Lafreniere. Same thing here. Hughes, former agent of Letang, is now the Canadiens' main guy, and so because there is indeed that connection, it makes things very interesting when you try to project what could be. Now, I want to think about the Montreal Canadiens. I want to say, what if Kris Letang was indeed on the Habs? Of course, everybody in Montreal knows that the French connection, the Montreal-Quebec connection, is something that a lot of people like to place different levels of value on. Some people think it's more important than others. But at the end of the day, Kris Letang is a very good hockey player who happens to be from Montreal. And so having this guy on the team, he's automatically like the top defenseman, right? Like, I'm sorry, Jeff Petrie, you can go out there, you can do your thing, you try to shoot pucks into more shin pads on the power play, but Kris Letang has taken over your spot. Petrie is all of a sudden going to be a top 4 defenseman once again, and no longer a top 2. Having Kris Letang play alongside of, a defensive shutdown guy like Alexander Romanov sounds like a pretty good idea to me, although there is indeed a lot more work that the Canadiens' blue line is going to have to go through before this blue line really becomes what I believe they're capable of. But adding a Kris Letang certainly would make things a lot more interesting. So talk to me in the comments, what do you think about this entire idea over here? If you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, do you think it's going to be an easy job to keep Kris Letang on your team? I get it, it's a difficult cap world to navigate right now. You just signed Jeff Carter, you still got Malkin to think about, but based off of the conversations we're having here, do you think keeping Kris Letang is going to be a piece of cake, or do you think you're going to have to fight tooth and nail to actually get to a dollar amount you'd feel comfortable with, and thus would go out there and actually have a big conflict over when it comes to those negotiations? Or do you think he's likely just going to go to free agency and sign somewhere else? If you're a Canadiens fan, do you want the Canadiens to be that team? Do you care that Kris Letang is 34 years old? He's having a career year. He's still this capable at producing. So let me know in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. Host 99. And bye.